Mark Davyd, good morning. You are the Chief Executive of Music Venues Trust, which is an organisation I think you founded. Is that right?
That's correct, yes, in 2014.
Right, and who do you represent?
The Music Venue Trust is actually an independent charity and is just constructed as itself as a charity. But in 2015, we created something called the Music Venues Alliance. And that is a network of 860 grassroots music venues across the UK, in all parts of the UK. And Music Venue Trust acts as the representative of that body.
Right. So this morning, there's been some breaking news. Arts Council England have announced 2.25 million of immediate funding for live music venues.
Correct.
Did that come as a surprise to you?
No, we've been working very closely with DCMS originally and with government to explain the need for such a fund, which is related to the urgent position that grassroots music venues specifically find themselves in. And then we did some work with Arts Council England and DCMS over the last 4 weeks, demonstrating with evidence and data exactly why that money was needed, why it was needed in the short term, and the impact the negative impact of not providing it on the longer term support that's coming. So this short term support is all about making sure venues manage to survive to the point where the longer term funding can be made available.
Right, and so you're expecting more money as part of the 1.57 billion to be made available to live music venues?
Yes, we're very confident that it will be made available. What we can't predict yet, because we understand it's going to be a slightly competitive process, we do not know. We know that the venues themselves need about 50 million, all of them put together. But what we don't actually know is how much of that 1.57 billion pounds they may be able to access. They will have to make applications. But what we did know is that without this investment now, it wouldn't be possible for those venues to make it to the point where their applications might be paid out. The process that everybody's going to have to go through, we're expecting that funding to be announced this week. There will then be an application process, and it will take 8 to 12 weeks for that money to be in people's accounts. And so basically we knew that a significant minority of small music venues would not make it through that 8 and 12 weeks to get to the larger fund.
Wow. Okay. I mean, you said recently, I think in a submission to the Select Committee, the Culture Select Committee, that 93%, I think was the figure you gave, of live music venues would face closure. Do you think this 2.25 million is going to stop that now?
It's going to certainly help, and there are some other things that are happening. There's also the return of the Supporting Grassroots Live Music Fund, which was announced about a week ago. We already have venues making applications to that, and they're applying. There are actually effectively 4 pots of money here, and 3 of them are now in play. The first pot of money that's in play is the Save Our Venues campaign money, which Music Venue Trust put together with the venues. That's raised about 2.6 million so far, and we're going to be announcing some new things that audiences and artists can get involved with to raise more money for that, and that's all going out to help venues. There's this 2.25 million that's been announced today that venues can apply for from midday today. And the application process actually closes on the 3rd of August, and we believe the money will be in their accounts by about the 14th of August. So that's immediate funding as well. And the third one is the Supporting Grassroots Live Music Fund, which is money that's available to do projects. So either to do streaming and get some people back to work and get your venue used that way, or maybe even some limited capacity gigs, or putting on other events outside. All things that will help grassroots music venues get back to work and help artists and crew get back to work. So we're supporting that as well. We're not sure exactly how much money's in that one, but we know it's enough to get some venues up and running with some activity. The big one, that's 3 out of the 4. The big one is the 1.57 billion.
Yeah.
We are obviously delighted that grassroots music venues have been singled out, frankly, for ring-fence funding right now to address the urgent need they have. And we think that's a good indicator of the intention that that money is intended, some of it is intended to go to grassroots music venues. We've heard a lot of muttering and speculation that it was going to go to iconic institutions only, or all the usual suspects, or, explicitly to high arts. Well, the first bit of it has gone to grassroots music venues. So I think we can squash those rumors, and we can say, look, the direction of travel here is that grassroots music venues are going to benefit from this. They need to get their shit together, if you don't mind me being blunt. They need to make the applications, and they need to make good applications, which is things we will support them to do.
Yeah.
But the money is there, you know.
The thing you just mentioned just there about the big institutions, the culture secretary, the Secretary of State, when they announced the 1.57 billion, he used the phrase "the crown jewels." Do you think that was a mistake to use that phrase?
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, as far as I'm concerned, the crown jewels of British culture are Club I Fall Back, Broodnell Social Club, Tunbridge Wells Forum, 100 Club, Sneaky Pete's in Edinburgh, King Tut's in Glasgow. I could go on like that for about 10 minutes. That is the culture we have exported around the world for the last 70 years. We are world leaders in that.
Indeed.
That's the crown jewels of British culture.
I noticed that you didn't mention there the Royal Opera House. Do you find it difficult to make common cause with an institution like that?
I don't find it difficult to make common cause with it. I believe that culture like that deserves public subsidy. The question that we have to ask ourselves in something like a ring-fenced fund of £1.757 billion is how much of it belongs being supporting opera houses, ballet, theatre, all these other things, and how much of it belongs supporting grassroots, town and city-based culture that is diverse and is stretches into every corner of the country. And I think that's a big question for Arts Council England. They've got to administer this fund. I'm gonna make a very, very strong case, as you can probably already hear, that frankly, putting it into grassroots music venues is a way to make sure that lots of members of the public benefit wherever they live, and it benefits the culture they have chosen to engage with. It benefits the entry-level culture that people make their first choice about. Most young people's first cultural decision is based around music.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's make sure that's supported. Losing that, if we don't support that, it doesn't benefit opera or theatre or ballet or any of these other art forms in any way for that not to be supported. We appreciate it's difficult, but the straight answer is we're not looking for a fight with anybody. We're just fighting our own corner.
Yes. I mean, you've been intimately involved with the conversations that have been going on with government right from the beginning. Have you found that the performing arts as a whole industry has been working together, or has there been a little bit of people trying to defend their own area of the performing arts ecology?
I think there's been a collective message that performing arts is important, and that's why you're seeing this cultural renewal fund or recovery fund, whichever they decide to call it. I think there's inevitably going to be some arguments within, and those arguments also happen within the music industry itself. We're seeing a lot of letters being issued now, that actually recording studios are important, rehearsal spaces are important, artists and crew are important. All these things are true. All these things are true. Our specific case is ultimately all culture needs a space in which it happens. And that is the big issue for grassroots music venues. We do not have another mechanism whereby somebody who lives in a town or city, a young person, can be inspired to think they can be a singer-songwriter or the guitarist in a band other than them seeing somebody of their own peers or their own age group doing it in their locality. I was just talking to somebody actually, and I was explaining that we did a survey last year about how far away a young people in UK may be from their nearest live music event featuring an inspirational band. We did that piece of work last year. We found one young person in West Wales was 3 hours and 50 minutes on public transport away from their nearest live music event featuring original material.
I used to live in West Wales, and I can imagine that's true.
That's too far. That's too far. That's an unacceptable limit on what we're telling that young person their life can be. We're not giving them the creative inspiration that they deserve. We're failing, actually, and I think that's grassroots music venues.
Yeah.
I mean, if we looked at that argument with opera, I don't know how far some people in England must be 10 hours away from their nearest available opera, and that's wrong.
I think that's probably true, and there's probably only about 7 opera companies in the UK as well. Anyway, if the live music experience for kids who want to go and see an inspirational band like you just referenced, that involves a lot of people packed into a small space.
Yes.
How can these institutions survive with social distancing still in place?
The answer is with some level of public subsidy, but at the moment what we're doing, the reason I look so tired, Sam, is that we aren't just fighting about the money, we're also fighting on a number of different fronts, and we're also already talking about the future.
Right.
And on the subject of social distancing, we are engaged with science reviews, we are engaged with Public Health England. We are concerned that social distancing has become viewed as the be all and end all of how you might do this. But there are lots of other things you might do. You might want to do more testing and tracking and tracing. You might want to work harder on vaccines. You might want to talk about ventilation. You might want to talk about preventative things to stop infection getting into your venue. All kinds of things like that may reduce the need for social distancing. But yes, accepting that that's the case, it is going to be very difficult. It probably will require public subsidy for a little while. At the other end of that, the other piece of work we're doing is about the future. This crisis merely reveals to be true a number of things that Music Venue Trust has been saying for quite some time now, ever since we were created. The ownership of these buildings by commercial landlords is one of the biggest challenges to their survival. Roughly the same number of them as are under current threat are owned by commercial landlords. That's not good for a cultural infrastructure. We're quite unique in that in the world. Even in America, 50% of them are venue operator owned. We have a terrifyingly low number of them that are owned by their operators. And what that means is this crisis reveals people demanding the rent when there's no income, threatening to kick people out because they can't pay their rent, which they're legally entitled to do. But we need to do something about the ownership of these buildings. We need to do a lot about what we're calling the grassroots pound. That's when somebody watching this now turns up at a grassroots music venue and hands over £1 at the door to get in. How much of that pound is actually going to artists or to the venue or staying in the creative community or staying in the local economy? And I can tell you straight away that we already know that 20% of it is going on VAT and about 15% of it is going on rates. So that's 35% of it gone. And actually you want to know why artists are still not being paid enough in grassroots music venues? Well, let's look at the grassroots pound. We take that 35% that's gone just on taxes and rates, and then we take the next bit of it, which goes to commercial landlords. Over 50% of the money's already gone. That's not sustainable. We've got to reanalyze exactly how money is spent in these venues, and the audience should be demanding this much more. They should be demanding. People get very excited about how much they're paying their ticket company in ticket service charges. They should be much more concerned that we're paying 20% straight out to the government that doesn't actually invest in this sector. It's great to see them doing it now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk so passionately on this subject, and the area of the industry that you represent is the first one to have actual cash.
Yes.
As of this morning. So you're obviously very good at lobbying government.
Well, we think we're getting there. We've got it. There's still more work to do. Don't get this wrong. I mean, we're delighted. The main reason you can see the smile on my face is because we are the sector that is receiving the urgent funding ring-fenced to do the specific thing that we said needed to be done. Of course, we're pleased about that. But we want to see how the rest of the money is divided. We're going to be hot on that. We're going to be demanding it goes out to grassroots music venues. And we want to see long-term changes. We want to see long-term changes to the way the music industry looks at these venues. That's not good enough at the moment. It's not good enough to see that our highest selling art is going through these venues being poor for years, these venues making no money out of what they're doing. And then when they finally get a headline Wembley Stadium, no investment back into the bottom end. That's not good enough. It's not good enough for government to leave these venues 35% of the money already gone before they've done anything. That makes no sense. The reason government's having to step in here is because the ownership model is wrong and because they're overtaxed and because they're underinvested in. If we got all those things right, we can wear out pandemics ourselves.
Yeah. Last question, Mark, if I may. Are mosh pits a thing of the past?
Oh God, I hope not. I've been, I've been having dreams about crowd surfing. So I mean, I'm just assuming not. You're coming with me, aren't you, Sam? I mean, basically, the first time they tell me that everybody's vaccinated, I'm just going to spend the whole evening surfing around a crowd.
I will see you there.
Yeah.
Mark Davyd, Chief Executive of the Music Venues Trust. Thank you so much for talking.
Thank you very much, Sam. Lovely to speak to you.